Tales of Mithrym.
At the Sign of the Running Horse, narrated by Dolynuik, Part 11, Area of Effect. Dervil breathed a sigh of relief. This ought to square things with the warden. She wondered for a moment whether there might even be a bounty she could collect for the necromancer. In a moment, though, all happiness faded fast. Did you really think it would be that easy? The terrible, grating voice swirled around Dervil as it flowed through the trees. She flinched as she looked around in panic. She could see Cyrus's body on the ground. It seemed to be changing shape. It was twisting and writhing on the ground and turning into a deer? From behind a tree, the real Cyrus stepped out. "You foolish little girl," he shouted mockingly. "You think you're oh so clever, yes?" He roared with laughter. "You've barely even scratched the surface of the possibilities of magic. Allow me to show you how it's done." Utterly terrified, Dervil stepped back. "How did you do it? That's not possible." Cyrus said darkly, "You dare attempt to take my life when you hadn't even noticed the marking rune I had placed on you? Did you think I would go away leaving my hostage behind so easily? Do you think I'm naive? That rune told me what you were doing every second." He scoffed. "That's why I prepared this little substitute." All of a sudden, glowing blue chains shot out of Cyrus's hands. They wrapped around Dervil like snakes and held her hands tightly together. "There, that should stop you trying any more of your childish magic," he said, and began walking away. "Come along now, and do be quiet unless you want to be gagged as well." Compelled by the magic chains, Dervil followed him through the trees. She hated him even more than before. As they moved off, sounds erupted out of the forest behind them. A voice was yelling out through the darkness. It was Alvin. He was leading the way, shining a lantern in one hand as his sword glowed in the other. Beside him, the captain of the wardens was holding a loaded fire wand. Sparks of orange light flickered in the barrel. Alvin peered around the dark forest. "Are you sure it was a good idea to come in pairs after a necromancer?" he said, as he made his way, narrowly avoiding the low branches. "Why? Because it would be unfair for the necromancer?" the captain chuckled. "Yes, that was definitely what I meant," he replied sarcastically. "It would hardly be good sport to gang up on a murderer like that," he added, a little more hotly than he expected. She laughed. "We're going to get to them and end this. I promise. My wardens have strict orders to surround but not to engage." "Good," said Alvin. "But it will be different if I get to him first. I just want to let you know. I will engage Cyrus while you get Dervil away and call for backup. Is that clear, Captain?" The captain sighed. "Sure," she said. "I agree." "And we can dispense with the jokes while we are on the hunt," he said heavily. "Each word should be spent cautiously. I don't want us to be ambushed or miss our chance because we were joking and having a laugh." "By Ian's hammer, what a grumpy young man," thought the captain, as she watched Alvin's back darkly silhouetted by the lantern light. The two continued quietly for some way. "For the love of the crafters," the captain exclaimed in a disappointed tone. "We must have been walking for nearly an hour. I'm surprised we haven't found a single clue left behind by them." "I was never really much of a tracker, to be honest with you," Alvin replied, "and our quarry specifically chose the woods to face us. He could have taken the carriage or a horse and gone down the road, but he did not. He must be very confident in whatever he is doing." "For Ian's sake," she cursed. "Indeed," Alvin nodded. "We will be in a world of trouble if we are not careful. I'm quite certain he plans to kill us." The captain considered this. If only she had some way to tell the other wardens that too. "Stop!" Alvin halted with his hand raised and fists clenched. "Do not move." The captain flinched, but she was well trained enough to not pull the trigger on her loaded wand. Now was no time to waste a cartridge, and certainly not to give away their location like that. "What's going on?" she whispered. "What did you see?" "We are walking into a trap," he replied gravely, then turned back towards her. "I have a sense for these things." "I see," she said. "Then thank Ian that you were with me. But what sort of trap?" "I'm not sure." The captain thought for a moment. "I don't think Cyrus could have had enough time to make a powerful trap. He would have had to keep moving." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small charm. Placing a finger on one side of it, the metal began to glow with a blue light. She held it out and moved it around them. The pale light washed over nearby objects without really illuminating them. She stopped, though, just as a single object began to shine out in response. "There," she said, pointing to a tree nearby. "There's something in the hollow of that trunk." Signaling for Alvin to move behind her, she drew up her wand and, aiming it at the tree, pulled the trigger. Bright orange fire engulfed the tree for a moment, but it died down quickly. The two searched the trunk and found a small carved doll, charred and smoldering. The captain took out her charm again and moved it over the doll curiously. "That could have been nasty," she said, as she finished the checks. "If we had walked into the radius of that curse, our minds would have been taken and sealed inside the doll." Alvin shuddered. She continued, "We would have been left empty, walking and talking, but without thoughts or memories or anything. We would have been like living puppets." Alvin looked around at the hundreds of dark trees. The captain began reloading her wand. The two continued on, cautiously.
Tales of Mithrym are written by Jimmy Clephane. Mithrym is a fantasy world built for the Dungeon Room role-playing game system. To find out more about the world of Mithrym, or to try out the game, go to www.mithrym.com.